It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables.
Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
The detective said missing kids usually come home. What happens when they don't?
Based on a true story.
Police looking for John Gacy.
We discovered bodies. By the looks of it, they're younger men. The things he did to those kids. He's sick.
The system failed these families.
Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Do you know how many there are?
Up to you to find out.
Hey there, welcome to Why We Roll, a tabletop role-playing game design podcast.
We're your hosts, Chris Pickett, creator of the historical fantasy game Danse Macabre, and Wythe Marshall, creator of the political sci-fi game Stillfleet.
Throughout the show, Chris and Wythe hope to amplify new creative voices. We'll chat with different TTRPG designers, focusing on the world of indie games.
We take a curious approach to game design, working through a range of mechanical and narrative questions that are pertinent to many designers, players, and GMs.
We hope to showcase fresh and even challenging ideas about what makes imagination-based games just so powerful.
Okay, let's find out why we roll.
Hey, welcome to Why We Roll.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
We have a special guest. So we're back to tape in more regularly, Chris. And we have some great guests lined up. And who knows exactly when this will debut as a podcast. So if you're watching on the stream, you're getting, the good stuff early.
Yeah, it's really exclusive.
It is exclusive for X amount of time it takes us to produce all of the media artifacts. But we're super excited. We're really excited to talk to Leo Andrade today, who's, a collaborator and someone I just really admire and I think has a lot to offer when it comes to game design in general. But yeah, there's a lot of topics we can bring up. But Leo has a new game with some of his collaborators that just came out. So we're taping October 24th, right in the heart of spooky season.
Oh, yeah.
And right in the middle of the first season of Why We Roll. Chris, do you have any other introductory comments, thoughts?
Oh, no, not much from me. Should we introduce ourselves again?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
okay.
Go for it.
Sure. Well, actually, Leo, why don't you start us off? Why don't you introduce yourself? How would you describe yourself to everybody?
Oh, hello, everyone. I'm Leo. I'm from Brazil. I'm a game writer / narrative designer / translator. I've been working as a tabletop RPG creator for about 3 years now, across different systems, sometimes making my own original stuff. And the latest thing I have made that is available and is currently at a discount for spooky season reasons is a game called Death Sentence, for which I was the developmental editor, translator, and sort of producer. We're probably going to get into it a little bit later. And it's a game where you get to control more than one character because life is cheap, dying is part of the fun, and you're encouraged to think more with your storytelling brain than with your "oh no, my precious baby" brain, like we do in other tabletop RPG games that we get super attached to the characters. Mm-hmm. In this one, you sort of baby meat grinder yeet, more like.
I love that. I love that so much. Also, as someone who really enjoys a lot of meat grinders, love high lethality kind of games for tabletop. I think that's fantastic. We should always go narrative first, and if your character is the victim of the narrative, then all the better.
Right. So maybe I know you've done other games and we should talk about them as well, but since Death Sentence is kind of the newest, Leo, do you want to give us a little bit more insight into what is the game? I know you worked on it with other people, and I'm excited to play. I am going to play it with you soon. I have not played it, so I'm very excited. I've read it. It's not long. It's really a good deal on itch, so I put the link in the chat, and I definitely recommend people go check that out. But yeah, Leo, why don't you give us a little more of a pitch? And I'm there's some specific mechanics I might ask you about, but I think for now, maybe you can tell us like the origins, like why a slasher RPG.
All right. Death Sentence began as a thing one of my friends created to play with our group. And he had this thought about eventually pursuing making it a proper product to put it up online and stuff. But this isn't a guy who, does games professionally. So there was a little bit of insecurity and like when you're trying to put out your very first thing and you get lost in the weeds because you're tweaking. You don't want to embarrass yourself with your first thing. So he kind of got lost in the weeds a little bit with that. But I played it with him. I ended up running it with other people, and I was like, dude, this is great. You managed to catch something really special. If you want, I can swoop in and help you as a developmental editor, because I've been doing tabletop RPG work for a while. We can put it together. I can show you some new tricks, and then when I need some extra writing, I can do a bit. I can ask you to fill in a bit more. I'll translate what you have in Portuguese. We get our other friend who's a writer to jump in, and we can make a really cool thing. He even had done a lot of graphic design stuff by himself, and we took the bones of what he was going for and we adapted it into what it eventually became. And the core of the core of the Death Sentence experience is that it's supposed to emulate the structure and feel of a slasher movie. It's not a slasher if people don't die to begin with. So, and usually, like with rare exceptions in stuff like Mike Flanagan's Hush, for instance, you have an ensemble character because people are supposed to die a lot, like in X, for instance, Ty West's X. And because there is this high lethality, and it's a thing that's meant to be played exclusively as one-shots, following a set 3-act structure, it's important to make sure people have more than one character, because otherwise your character dies and you're out. What do you do then? Do you go home? Do you just watch? Doesn't sound like a lot of fun. There are other games that manage to achieve a lot of the horror tension without necessarily the lethality, but it's with the threat always looming over you. Stuff like Dread with the Jenga tower, which I think is fucking brilliant. But Death Sentence isn't about that so much. It's about emulating the experience of the slasher movie while also letting players take control of the narrative with the toolkit that they get. So the same way that you could say Mörkborg is light on rules, heavy everything else, this is light on rules, heavy on story. We abstracted as much as we could to make it not mathy, because I think doing a bunch of shit with numbers is anathema to the horror tabletop experience.
Yeah, the most math
the most math you're going to do in that sentence is you see how many dice you get to roll, and you count how many of the die rolls resulted in a success. You don't have to, add up the numbers. You're just 1 success, 2 success, 3. Okay, what does that mean? It means this. Done. Moving.
Very cool.
Which is really, really cool. It even the duration of a session can be closer to the duration of a movie than to the sort of stereotypical marathon tabletop RPG session that a lot of folks have. I think most people in the hobby at some point, like maybe you're all young and you have free time and wow, it's 8 hours of D&D in the weekend. Well, as adult obligations encroach, free time tends to shrink, and ain't nobody got time for that. It's great when it happens. I've had 12-hour-long insane sessions. That was great. It's really hard to get the gang together for something like that these days.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's a lot of games that focus on shorter play with the option to go longer. I always feel like I like, with my friends, like the idea of like a campaign, even if it's broken up, into lots of 2-hour sessions, because we're all busy. But I like the idea. One thing that appeals to me at Death Sentence and some things like this, and I think there's something in the air, because I think Danse Macabre even has like the dice pool, right, and the horror, and then Eat the Reich, which the preview just dropped. So if you backed Rowan Rick and Deckard's new game about Parisian vampires killing Hitler, that these are things where that's meant to be like cinematic and kind of one arc that has a very natural, there's some sort of end built in from the beginning, which is really nice when you think about narrative structure and some of the things I know, Chris, we've talked about with our games. So it's interesting to think about with Death Sentence, the narrative structure of the slasher movie. We've all watched a million of them. But you've also mechanicalized it. So it's not just like, okay, it's a short game and at the end, a bunch of people will have died. Maybe someone lives, maybe not. Like, let's see. And I'm curious, is the idea that the threat always wins, or there's some actual tension? Like, we could beat the threat. The threat is abstracted. The threat could be any horror thing, right? That's correct?
Yeah. You could make the threat be one nigh unkillable thing, like
Jason.
I guess on the two different ends of the spectrum, you have like, fuck it, zombie apocalypse. You guys are rushing to get into a bunker. And on the other end, it's like, welcome to Cocaine Bear's cave.
Yeah.
Right.
I think.
But so you have that, and then you also have some other mechanics, which are I think unique to Death Sentence, which are really appealing. So maybe you could at some point mention that. But just in general, like the horror mechanicalization you've done is kind of interesting here.
The act structure is important because it regulates the use of some resources. So it's a big deal. It helps keep things flowing at a certain pace. Like in the beginning, if you think about the movie experience, there is that part where, okay, we're establishing character relationships, we're figuring out who's connected in which way, and we're slowly hinting that something's not right.
Yeah, that's the first 20 minutes of any horror film.
Yeah, and then the switch, like the moment you get some monster on screen or some violence happening, is when you're getting into the meaty part of the movie where people are going to in a movie where it's about life and death and not the girl who drowned in the building wants you as her new mom. That's not what you're doing in this sentence. It's about a struggle for survival, sometimes with a supernatural thing. You can certainly do that. And so when you switch from one act to the other in this 3-act structure, which has a very clear setup, struggle, conclusion, you reset how many times players can use some of their character traits more powerfully. They can keep using them all the time, but they have one single really powerful use that adds more to the dice pool for every act, and that keeps people on their toes, and it makes sure that you keep things narratively momentous. Mm-hmm. So in that sentence, you don't have something like classes and powers and so on. It's just people. You have action attributes, you have traits that are little sentences that describe them, and you have relationships, and that's it.
Very cool.
To start playing the game, you only need to distribute 6 points between 3 action attributes and define 3 traits, and that's it. You don't need anything else for one character. You're going to have 2 or 3, but you can come up with a character, dare I say, even quicker than you would fill up a Blades in the Dark sheet, which is also super duper fast.
Oh yeah,
Death Sentence is much quicker than Blades, I think, for character design.
And then the relationships are all established during play, because in a movie, the characters, most of them, have pre-existing relationships. They were already husband and wife, or rivals, or best friends before the camera started rolling. But it only becomes real to us once it is expressed in the movie in some way. Mm-hmm. That sentence operates in the same way, in which you have to role-play something that makes the relationship clear, and from that moment on, those relationships can affect your action rolls mechanically.
That's very cool.
You don't even need to be in the presence of the character you're establishing a relationship with. Like, suppose you are sharing a room with a friend, and you establish a relationship with another character who's not there by basically spilling the beans and going like, yeah, man, I'm super nervous about asking her out. Holy shit. That counts.
Right.
Yeah. You can also make it more momentous and define a relationship in play. So the first time I played, I had 2 characters that were polar opposites. One of them was sort of a himbo bodybuilder that I based on a Brazilian social media personality who had sort of a crazy story circling around me, the Twitters. And then the other one was just a terrible, terrible rich boy. Like, he had his reasons to be terrible. His dad fucking sucked. But during play, the rich boy was the one making the selfish calls and being a dick. And so one of my girlfriend's characters, she decided didn't like him. And so Marjorie made sure that this one character would freaking die. She used him as a distraction to call all the monsters toward him so she could vote the other way. And some people are like, oh my god, I wouldn't be able to play a game like that. But in my groups, we pretty much welcome PvP. And it was really, really fun. Like, we had mechanicalized the fact that she really didn't like him. She would get an advantage to do... She would get something out of getting him hurt, and she did it in a way that improved the odds of survival of the rest of the gang.
Right. Well, there's something...
That was awesome, and there were no hard feelings.
Yeah, I mean, there's something nice too about having multiple characters, right? It's like a funnel kind of thing, right? Where you're not getting attached to a single character. So again, if it serves the narrative for that character to be sacrificed, even though it is your character, you don't have the same kind of, like you said earlier, emotional connection where you're going to be upset that you are being sacrificed by another character. There's something really refreshing about that, actually. I'm really curious too. Okay, so one thing I want to ask you about is the kind of resource management that goes into the act structure that you mentioned earlier. If you could expand on that a bit. So maybe, yeah, I'll ask you about that first. We'll get to the other question later. But yeah, so what does that look like? Because I think that's really interesting in terms of setting tension for a horror setting as well, where it's like, I know that I can use this at this time, but if I wait and draw it out, is it going to be better if I use it later? How does that break down mechanically?
All right. On the side of the person who's running the thing, what that we call a narrator in the book, ideally for every act, you're going to make sure that you have one or two narrative beats that you're trying to usher the characters to, because it's a thing that has a shared narrative, that has a narrative structure as a shared storytelling device that everyone has bought into. Railroading is less of a problem. You can present the space as a sandbox, but then it's your job as the narrator to make sure that the players can get to the narrative beats. If you're sometimes shifting a thing from one position to the other, you might have to do that. Sometimes, like, I'm a fan of improvising if you realize that something you planned isn't going well. In the book, the original creator, Guilherme, he wrote a thing about, like, they figured out the mystery too quick. There is very likely a way in which you can change the answer without that feeling like a rug pull, necessarily. The example is that, they find tufts of hair hanging from branches, and you mentioned offhandedly that it's a full moon night, and they're like, oh, it's a werewolf. Or not. Just let them find the mangled carcass of the bear that the actual monster effortlessly mauled and done, Does the trick. Keep the ball rolling. Okay. So, first act, you're setting things up as the narrator. You're making sure the players, get to the hints of something being wrong. And then in the middle, they're going to be questing for their way out, for a way to defeat the monster, or the knowledge they need to go away, or the car keys, for instance. So you're administering mainly the beats and using the monster to keep the pressure on, and occasionally pulling the threat back, because you need to give the players some breathing room. You need some moments of relatively low tension to make sure that character work can happen and planning and strategizing can happen. Mm-hmm. The same way that if you watch a movie and every 5 minutes on the dot, jump scare, gore, that movie's not too good. You need those moments of that you're holding your breath expectantly, and the character is trying to think or having a breakdown. And so you use the threat in a way that enforces this. Like, you're going to be using your threat as a bit of a hit and run thing. The players will not necessarily feel like that. They might feel like the pressure is on all the time, but there will be organic spaces where they can catch their breath. And then you can get fucking relentless with it a little bit later on, once the MacGuffin is acquired, once the secret is unveiled. That is when players have probably lost a character or two, and now they're attached. In my case, my good boy himbo bodybuilder got strangled by a cop in a car from behind while desperately trying to run over an owl monster with said car, and someone else was trying to get the pistol.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We had a very fun scenario in which there was indeed a final girl. It happened completely organically.
Classic.
Okay, on the player side, the main thing about the 3-act structure is that there are these things called drama points. You can acquire drama by doing two things. One, you establish a relationship with another character. If you do that in a way that, and you roleplay it, you get a drama point. And drama points that a player has can be used for the benefit of any of their characters. They are not locked to the character that acquired them, because we're focusing on the storytelling, not so much on power gaming one character to survival.
Yeah.
The other way that you can get drama points, and I think that might be Wythe's favorite rule, is you allow one of the character traits you wrote down to remove dice from your pool. You're like, okay, I'm assembling my pool, and I'm going to voluntarily take away dice from my pool because I wrote this thing here, and I think I can interpret it in a way that's detrimental to my character.
Mm.
You get the point. Your character might die, but you get the point that you can use for maybe another character later, or if your character survives, fucking great. That's epic. That's epic. Awesome. So like, it can be role-playing the fact that your character isn't too smart. It can be, for instance, that you are in a The Descent situation, and you are caught between a literal rock and the gnashing fangs of the inbred humanoids. Your character is a claustrophobe, and he really, really, really doesn't want to get into that fucking caving squeeze.
Mm-hmm.
But he's going to, and you're subtracting dice because he's going to be terrified in there. You get drama for that. You can do that voluntarily. The GM can take away dice from you for other reasons, but when the GM takes away, when the narrator takes away dice, you don't get anything. You have to voluntarily do something bad to your character to reflect how you characterized them to get the drama points.
That's fantastic.
And you can positively use each of the traits you have in a more powerful way than usual once per act. And then if the act switches, that means you get another really powerful use of one of your traits. Mm-hmm. One example is your character is good with guns because his grandpa used to take him hunting. If you use it in Act 1 to get 2 dice on a check, you can't do it again for 2 dice until the switch.
Right.
So that's the sort of resource economy that you're dealing with. But other than that, it's not a game that makes you manage a whole lot. You're more making your calls based on when it feels appropriate.
Very cool.
And the final way in which you can get drama is the same way that you would get, say, inspiration in D&D or hero points in Pathfinder. If you do something really cool that enhances the story, the GM can just go. They could just go and give you a token because you know what? Well done. Clap, clap, clap.
Right.
So
can we ask? So I'm curious. Like, did you come to these mechanics because you said your friend wasn't as interested? Like, did they all come baked in? I guess, or did you help develop these through playtesting? Like, how do we get to good new mechanics? You know.
He had all the initial mechanics, so like drama, panic, relationships. They were all already there. I helped him tweak the math. I helped him write because there were some like how many dice the pool can get. Do we do the thing they do in Spire, where if your pool gets to 0 or negative dice, so there is added negative consequences and so on. So that sort of thing. I wrote all the extra spicy PvP relationship options. So the only one that was negative that was originally there was the one that you just hate the dude. But enemy of my enemy, lust, and there was another one. I wrote 3 or 4 ones that are the ones that you need to do a good session 0 to make sure you can use. Because they are about either sexy stuff or or PvP. Those were things that I wrote myself. A lot of the explanations were really kind of dry because the friend isn't a writer. He clearly has a good game design brain, but he needed the writing to get punched up. So I overhauled a lot of that. In the process of translating, I was editing at the same time.
Sure.
There was some tweaks that I suggested to the way each individual relationship affected the roles mechanically after the playtests. That was also a thing. And I wrote the original pamphlet scenario that comes with. So out of the box, you have a session that you can play that I wrote after talking to him about what does a GM need, what needs to be included in a playable scenario. So those were me, but the game itself was already done when he presented it to us. It just needed refining, and game design is a lot of refining, I think.
Oh yeah.
I've already talked to Wythe about it. Sometimes I'm a little about how in the indie scene people like to say that playtesting is overrated. It can be if you're using a very, very, very established thing with very solid core mechanics. Like if you're doing, for instance, Pathfinder, you might not need to play test all your combat encounters for balance.
Right.
I think in D&D sometimes you have to, because the CR system, the challenge rating system for D&D is a mess, and the rules don't come together as elegantly as they do in Pathfinder.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends what the purpose of playtesting is, but I think for new mechanics, I'm very much on the side of well, you have to playtest it if it's truly, if you're innovating, and why wouldn't you be innovating? So it's just also a mindset thing of
but I get it. In video games, it's completely uncontroversial, test. It's important because, okay, you might be able to put out a good thing, a cool thing without playtesting, but it's not going to be the best it can be.
Yeah.
The best it can be requires you to test it. And playtesting isn't hiring a person to professionally playtest. It's you sitting down with a group of people and running it, or having someone else run it while you're around and watching.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be super formal,
Well, you want earnest feedback about what's fun. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Way back in the day, I did make a couple of things that I didn't playtest when I was beginning because it was hard to, make it happen. But these days, if I'm putting something out, like Wythe Chris, playtested. I playtested with multiple dice systems before I chose one. Wythe Chris, the 2d6 game, it was almost Caltrop core, almost pools of d4s. And I was like, I'm not getting the granularity of results that I wanted from this. So I'm going to go the other way. I played both ways. I interviewed my players. I sent them a little thing to answer questions. And that made it the best that it could be.
Yeah, I love the social scientific approach. Really try to get people's, unfiltered, thoughts.
Yeah, that is hard with playtesting when you're with a group of friends as well.
It is. Conventions can be great for that, which I know not every game designer is able to do all the time. But even in anyone's area, if there's a regional one and there's a free playtest table, that's a great way to just get some quick feedback from randos.
Yeah. And there are those friends who are just brutally honest, and you want those at the table, man.
Yeah, that too.
There's a few, yeah.
And you can, even story, talking as a narrative designer and writer here, you can very much test story, which, again, uncontroversial in video games, but in the tabletop RPG, there's a little bit of discussion. But I'll give you an example. I wrote an adventure, a horror adventure for 5e. That was the first thing I put out. And there's this one NPC who is a malevolent force, but not outright antagonistic and try to kill the players. What he wants is to get the players to give him their most cherished memories in exchange for vital information. And that can be super cool because the way I set this up is that he can cast message to everyone in the house, and he knows what's happening in the house. So when a player falls unconscious and everyone's like, fuck, he's like, I can cast Revivify. I just want the memory of your first kiss. Cool. But I put a fucking spell in his spell list that let him try to, charm people into giving him stuff. And that completely robs the trope of all the pathos. It it was not cool, and I committed that mistake in the playtesting, and then I removed that from the spell list, and I added a bit of boxed text to tell GMs that make sure players are willingly trading the things this character wants, because otherwise it's going to lose all the weight. I didn't think of that when I wrote it at first. I found out by making a mistake when running it, and it made a superior product as a result.
Yeah, I've often found, even just with stuff that does feel successful, if you run it again and try to remember, and like if you take notes or wrote it out in full and run it again, it's different. And sometimes it's not even like, oh, I failed. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. You discover opportunities to refine or make better or clarify. And sometimes just options. You discover like, oh, we could do this or that. And like, yeah, it's so much better to playtest. It's just mind-boggling. I think it's if you're not just publishing for people to read only, but if you actually want people to play these things as documents where you're not there, you know. Yeah, Chris, it looks like you're about to say something.
Well, I just am fervently agreeing. I probably should have my mic on mute because I just wanted to be like, yeah. I mean, like, it's just, why not playtest? I think even if you're doing something for an established IP, it's like, at least play a session, like get some experience with it, do a little bit of editing, even if it's on the fly. So why we roll, we stand playtesting. I think we can say
totally
that.
Like,
go on record.
There are other things too. For instance, suppose you're a writer who speaks English as a second language. Like, I learned it spontaneously from the PlayStation. Didn't study it a day of my life, got the certification anyway.
That's awesome.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
There will be things you will miss.
Yes.
And now here's a funny one. When I was running my first D&D session, I named a character Belland.
Oh, yeah, that's unfortunate.
Because I never heard the word, and it just sounded like a name that went to the surname, and one of my players knew, and he was trapping in the chuckles the entire time.
That took me a second, because that's a very
British.
That's a very UK term that does not get used in the United States very often, but you do hear it on like BBC television, like stuff like that.
So,
that's good.
That's something that can be fixed by someone just reading your thing, and if you can get someone to read your thing, also great. Like, if you're writing something that can be played solo, the reading is also playtesting.
Yes.
That brought up, a couple other topics, because I know you'd mentioned Wythe Kunst, your game about art, which I want to talk about too. You have a modern game, not a slasher. But you just mentioned translation, and I know that's how we had met, actually, is you translated some work for Stillfleet. So, and I hope to hire you to do more in addition to writing, because you're a great writer, and I assume you're a good translator. It's one of those funny things where you never really know without learning the other language, in which case, like, I don't need a translator. But yeah, I definitely want you to talk about, your other work, but like, just on the translation front, what started first? Were you making games and then later translating, or were you translating and that led you to making games? And like, how do you think of the translation? Because you mentioned a couple times, it seems like the translation has helped you refine what you're writing, actually, which is really interesting and makes sense because you're forced to pay careful attention to the language.
Yeah, like, if you're not a good writer, you're not going to be a good translator. Doesn't happen. You might be doing, say, super dry technical house appliance manual. Then maybe you don't need to be a good writer in the sense of writing compelling fiction, but you better be able to write down complex things digestibly. It's still a shade of being a good writer. And when you're doing RPGs, you're simultaneously doing technical documentation and instructions for the people and making something that is fun and flavorful. You can read RPG stuff as entertainment. And I think most people in the hobby have read more games than they played. Or you read the thing and then you're like months waiting for your opportunity to break out the box or get your people together and like, guys, okay, listen, we didn't get everybody together to play our standard campaign. How about a one shot of this? So I was reading things, and let's roll back a bit. Translation came after I started designing games. I got into designing tabletop RPGs because I got interested in narrative design for video games, and I was already running RPGs a lot and playing. And I realized that there's a lot of functional carryover of skills from one to the other. You're making things with the purpose of them being interacted with and expecting that people will have creative ideas you're not foreseeing. And you're trying to factor in how player agency interacts with your authorial intent. Translation came a little bit later as something that I felt qualified to do from frequently reading things and spotting bits. There was like wonky translation. I'm going to look up the original, and there it was in the original English. The thing I realized was actually happening after I read the Portuguese translation. I was like, no. I didn't have much formal study in translation, but I started with games from other Brazilian tabletop RPG designers. Eventually, I saw that you were looking for somebody to do Stillfleet because you were very bothered by the idea of your game being monolingual, which makes a lot of sense when you read the source material. You like to make things multicultural, pluralistic, and just out there.
Well, yeah, and we I think from the beginning, because we just had a player base online who was all over the world, so it just felt very strange in a way to only be able to offer it in one language, and to not feel confident enough, and like not know how other designers dealt with that or whatever. So I just it was like a random tweet, but I think that's how we connected. Was just like, hey, has anyone considered translating stuff? I think I asked about Spanish actually, and you pitched me on like, well, what about Brazilian Portuguese? And it makes a lot of sense. And ideally, right, in an ideal world where we are all doing this professionally and have all the resources, we translate everything to everything. But to some degree, it's also like a time and money thing of like what makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. But it's been interesting seeing. I guess I knew some Brazilian game designers before I met you, but it didn't occur to me just how many awesome game designers there are in Brazil. Yeah. And so it wasn't sort of on my mind until now it's like, oh, I see, there's so many people, and it's very impressive. And I don't know, like again, without I'm reading everything in English, so I guess I'm only reading whatever gets translated, if that makes sense. So I don't know what I'm, percentage wise, am I reading like able to read like 5% of the awesome stuff or 1% or whatever? But it's interesting. I imagine that's true of every other languages too, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot of us are also writing in English from the get-go. Like I have to go back and translate things that I wrote in English into Portuguese, because a lot of how I'm doing this is like I need this to be in my portfolio because I am aiming for a thing. I have this I really have this dream of eventually making video games because I grew up on them. They were some like, how some books, movies, games are fucking formative experiences for you and change you. I think one of the first pieces of media that got me to cry my eyeballs out was the Mass Effect series, and I was like, fuck, I want to make that. Or like Soma. Soma is a sci-fi horror game that fucking broke me. My friends were worried because I went into this rabbit hole of philosophy of the mind and connectomics and thinking about what a person make. So I had this long extended existential crisis, and I was constantly thinking about that sort of stuff and reading up on philosophy of the mind. So I went like, Thomas Nagel, what does it feel like to be a bat into the hardcore? We simulated a worm brain into this little Lego robot.
You should not read the
that's
novel.
Another one that...
Yeah, that's awesome. What novel?
I'm constantly looking for media that makes me uneasy.
Great. I'm reading a book right now called Blind Sight, which, Wythe, I was actually going to suggest it to you later. I don't know if you've read this or not. It's a...
No.
hard sci-fi. A lot of it has to do with philosophy of the mind, what makes up consciousness. It's up your alley for both of you, it seems like.
It looks dope.
Watts is the author.
Do write down the name, because it's going to fall off my brain as you guys direct me to talk about something else, and then I go down the
we'll circle back to it.
I'm just gonna throw some stuff in the chat. Mass Effect was deep. I haven't played Soma, but as my brother points out, Mass Effect is crazy. I still look, I barely played it at all, but to just even look at the design of everything and the depth of lore, as I don't usually play a lot of games, but often like read lore about sci-fi games, and like basically they're what were they called, like the fan wikis and like help guides.
Dude,
and it's so interesting.
get you on stream playing small indie sci-fis. Like, straight up, first thing, play the Red Strings Club, and then I would just watch you over the decisions. It would be so fucking funny.
Or
we should do genre switching where people have to like learn history or like write a sestina, you know, like or write a rap song, and then like I have to play video games, which I never do, but I like respect them deeply, and they're such close cousins of tabletop. But you know, it is different at the end of the day. You're writing for database, you're writing with different sort of if this then that mentality. The rules are, I don't know, it's the same, it's not the same, you know, in the same way like board game design is different, or just writing a novel, right, is different. But
I would love to see Wythe. I would love to see you play Alien Isolation sometime.
Yes,
let's do it.
Yes, that's
a good one.
Great.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Oh, before one thing I know, Leo, you and I really both like is indie movies. So we should also. So I think we're talking about translation. We should hear about your art game. Anything else you want to plug? And we should definitely talk about horror movies since it is October 24th.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I've been tweeting one horror movie every day since the month started.
Nice.
Following a few criteria. Each movie doesn't have to fulfill all of the criteria, but I was trying to get as many of them as possible. The criteria are, I was trying to get all the letters of the alphabet. Fuck the letter Q in particular, I didn't get one. Non-English, non-US, indie. I managed to make most of them fulfill all of the criteria. For the folks who discovered me because of that sentence, it might be a little counterintuitive that slasher isn't super represented, but it is there. Like I really, really, really like folk horror.
Oh, me too.
Especially.
Me too.
Like if I had to put together like what is my jam in the narrowest sense possible, Asian folk horror found footage.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah, I just watched The Wailing for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and beautiful. I gotta watch it. It's good. I was thinking, Leo, earlier when you were talking about the three act structure of Death Sentence. Another one that I just recently watched, which I guess you could argue is indie. It is English, but Possession by Andrzej Żurawski. I just saw that for the first time a few weeks ago. And
the 80s one with the messy divorce.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
it's on the list.
It is.
I think I saw it in a synopsis somewhere.
It's very good. But you know, even I know that Death Sentence, the 3-act structure, we're thinking more about like slasher movies and everything like that. But immediately I thought of Possession, where you're talking about moments of a lack of tension versus moments of high tension, things like that. And there's so much dead space in Possession where like things feel wrong, they feel off, but nothing's really happening. So I really like that in Death Sentence you could even apply it outside of a slasher genre if you wanted to. You could get even more abstract with it. If you felt like.
Oh yeah, I plan to try to play with some of those things in games that are more political or spy, because that's my like obsession. But yeah, I think they work really well for slasher. Obviously the drama, but I think they would work kind of in general. I also have to say folk horror is also my jam. For our wedding thank you cards we made, we tried to make it look like a poster from a movie in 1974 that's a British folk horror movie. So we went for a very specific like look, because you know it was at a farm, and so it already for some reason the photographer, the filter she used to us looked like old horror movie filter. Like, I don't know why. All the stills are a little bit like they're about to get knifed in the back. So we're all the same wavelength there. But yeah, I posted. Yeah, it's a great thread, Leo. I haven't seen most of these, so I feel like, oh man, you're way ahead on the horrorometer.
Yeah, I gotta check out this list.
We have to blame my girlfriend for this. Growing up, I was bad with horror because of an unfortunate childhood encounter with the American remake of Ju-on the Grudge. When I have sleep paralysis hallucinations, I hallucinate with hair cascading as if somebody's bent over the bed watching me.
Yeah, that's creepy.
To this day, I am a person that wakes up screaming. I don't know how I became a horror person. Wow. But ever since I did, I started having less of the night terrors. So talk about fucking exposure therapy.
Yeah,
right.
Wow, that if there ever was a case.
My girlfriend got me to watch The Witch, and from there it was just downhill. We were getting everything. I used to think I wouldn't vibe with slasher until I saw a couple good ones and started noticing some trends, like things that really, really exist and are a little surprising. Horror / thriller house invasion movies where the character has a disability. I can think of 3 very good ones off the top of my head that I was not expecting. Like Flanagan's Hush is a classic. I wasn't expecting to like it, but the way they made the killer was very, very real.
I haven't seen that one.
It's cool. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it, but like you get a little bit of time with the movie, you're going to be like, I know what online environments this person frequents. And C for Me is another one that's very well done, and like I think it's Don't Breathe, where Don't Breathe is another one, but it flips things in its head a bit. So I got exposed to a lot of stuff. I'm constantly watching. It's the genre I watch the most. It influences my fantasy stuff a lot. So like for some reason I ended up making a lot of horror-y things for Sword and Sorcery because you really, really can, and it's fun to do.
I think it lends itself to it really well.
Yeah, I agree.
And a lot of the classic Sword and Sorcery stuff kind of leans into necromancy and zombie or the undead, things like that anyway. So there's already these kind of pulp horror elements that are in that genre to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. Like close to that sentence, there's another thing I wrote that got released, and it's a third level adventure for 5e. That's horror. It's a dungeon crawly thing, and it revolves around cats. I wrote down a stat block for feral cat swarms and everything.
Great. We both have cats, so that's a very pro-cat show. They're very creepy animals, as much as I love them.
They are creepy. Another thing, too, dungeon crawls, I think, are inherently horror, which I don't think I've ever thought about or said in my life before, but there you have it. I think a dungeon crawl is inherently a horror genre setting because there's traps, you're looking around corners, it's dark, you don't know what's around, of course that's horror. That's it's like As Above, So Below, that horror movie where they're going through the French catacombs, or what's the one where, I should remember the name of this, I've seen it several times, they're spelunking in a cave, then there's like suddenly
The Descent.
The Descent?
Descent, yes. Yes, the
Yeah.
Descent, yeah. I mean, that's essentially a dungeon crawl, so it makes sense that these worlds would, overlap in so many ways.
Yeah, and I think that's one of there's a classic, I shouldn't say debate as if these things, that's like what people say on podcasts, right? Well, there's a debate about X. It's not really a debate. Within, literary studies, like you can talk about, like genre can kind of mean 2 different things, and people often try to disambiguate genre and setting. So you can have a horror story qua the genre of activity, the narrative structure within any setting. So it could be at Hogwarts, but there's a serial killer. Well, that's horror, but it looks like modern fantasy or whatever, alt Earth fantasy. And then, similarly, you could have a weirdly like traditional horrific setting, and then there isn't a slasher, there isn't really horror. And I think actually classic D&D, weirdly enough, despite its pulp roots and emphasis on violence, it's not very horrific. Like if you look back at Dragonlance or Dark Sun, it's a lot of like, I don't know, it's weirdly always epic imagery, but then the things I remember from actually trying to play the written TSR material from the 90s was like, I'm just fighting goblins. Why do they hate goblins so much?
Yeah,
it's like I'm fighting orcs. It's like it's boring and had no real connection to Ravenloft was the closest obviously to horror, but even then it was a lot of like a ghost jumps out at you, fight it, and it felt like an action movie with ghosts. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to it was in a horror setting, but whatever, it wasn't horrific.
I run Curse of Strahd. It's sort of my filler game for when my main campaign isn't happening, because my main campaign is 7 players. Curse of Strahd is just 4.
Whoa.
And like in the beginning, I managed to get a horror vibe going for Curse of Strahd for a while, but you can only sustain that for so long, while the characters get exponentially powerful.
Right.
One of my players can cast Sickening Radiance. Well, there goes the horror. But in the beginning, everybody has heard of the TPK mill in Curse of Strahd. I managed to make my players really antsy and nervous in that very beginning. It helps that I like to do voices and monster noises myself and really dwell on the descriptions and put music on and such. I'm very good at the hags. I should probably do hags a little less. But Ravenloft really only sustains the horror up to a point, and then your players are just punching everything in the face. Like, you are in the crypts of Castle Ravenloft, and then the player goes, I become a giant crab, and you're like, fuck!
Well, this gets at the thing, also, Lovecraft in his letters was always saying, is like, when you know something, it's inherently not scary, in a way. And so it's the unknowable. It's trying to balance that with not nonsense and not fantasy in the child literature sense, but like fantasy for adults where like there's something out there you don't know that's going to kill you. And that really applies to cosmic horror, where it's like a science fictional thing that we just have no idea exists or we don't know how to deal with it. But I also think even with slashers, if you think about it, it's just like a lack of knowledge about like, why is the serial killer killing me? Or like, who is, under the mask?
Yeah. Or why won't they die when I stab them back?
Right. And as soon as you know the rules and it's a little more realistic, it's like, okay, like in real life, the rules is like Wythe tries to like, frankly, I guess call the cops, right? Like, what would you do if there was like a serial killer hunting you down and they have to kind of construct ignorance.
That's why there's always no
agency. Phone. Yeah, no phone, no cell service. Yeah,
I guess you do have to be in a microcosm of isolation for that to work.
I'm still waiting on like horror about things that are basically haunting the fucking wires or internet hauntings, like whatever the hell Serial Experiments Lane was doing, but make me shit my pants.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That's what I'm waiting for. I like the idea of undeath on the internet. I just have to see it executed or take the time to write the goddamn screenplay myself, because it's in my brain a lot.
I feel like we've started to kind of tread into that a little. There's a, not to be too hackneyed, but there is a Black Mirror episode that kind of explores a little bit of that, where it's basically like a cloud service AI that simulates a guy after he dies, things like that. But it's not very scary.
That won't hurt.
Yeah, it was sad, but it wasn't horror necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. It was psychological drama, more like the Tchaikovsky novel I posted, and that's actually similar. Like, I think it's an Amazon show I don't think it's very good, but called Uploads, which is the same thing, where it's a horrific idea, but they treat it as a rom-com. So it's like it's all about all these themes about your digital afterlife, but it's about characters falling in love despite the barrier of one of them is like a simulation of a dead guy or whatever.
Terrifying, but I'm sure it's executed terribly. Wow.
Like, there are some things that there's people trying to make that in the real world. There's this case of a Russian dude who died, and his friend fed all the online communications that this guy had that she could possibly get her hands on, all his tweets, Instagram posts, conversations with her, conversations with his mom, everything she could get, to make the bot as sort of a tribute, a memorial, There's like, I'm waiting on a good deep fake horror. And it can't be about porn, because that's low-hanging fruit.
Right. It's got to be more creative. Well, Leo, we're coming up on an hour. I just want to make sure we kind of get to I know you've done a lot of cool work. Do you want to say anything about your other published material? Anything that you want people to check out?
Well, I mentioned Wythe Chris before. That's one I'm very proud of. It's a heist game. Also low crunch, 2d6s modifiers with very easy to implement powers. Character creation is also like, if you don't factor in coming up with a personality, you can do that in 5 minutes. But what's cool about it is that it's about anti-colonial art heisting. Have you guys seen the Jacob Geller museum theft video?
I don't think I've seen that, no.
It's one of the, in my opinion, best videos on YouTube. It's a series of stories about museum theft told by, the big boy video game essayist on YouTube, but sometimes he branches off and he talks about non-video game topics. And the museum theft video is amazing, and he gets to the anti-colonial part of, a lot of that stuff was stolen at gunpoint. You can't really say it in any other way. And from places sometimes you don't expect. Like, people forget that Greece was smashed under colonial overlord boots for a bit. And so the Ottomans gave the marbles to the British. That's fucked. Give those back, please.
Yeah.
And obviously, a bunch of scrappy underdogs doing some direct action are not going to fix the problem. But cathartic transgression in a controlled environment is fun, and sometimes that's a better way to be a hero than pull a Batman and go smash some junkie in the face.
Yeah. No, it's cool, and it's like the right level type narrative structure. Talking about, one big heist is a good episode. If you wanted to play it again, you could link them. There's tension. You could get caught. You could fail, and it has more narrative oomph behind it than like direct action qua pouring soup on a painting that's protected by Lexan, so it doesn't really matter. You just get arrested. Like nothing against those people as much as like it wouldn't be fun to roleplay that in this in the way that I'm talking about. But it is fun to play like Ocean's 11, and I think making it about decolonial politics is, chef's kiss, brilliant. So it's another good short game to check out.
And you can pack more stuff into that, like in terms of NPC suggestions, for instance. You can do some things that you don't usually do, like encounters you might have. It's not necessarily, a 2-meter tall guard rippling with muscles and stuff. It's a sleepless, overworked grad student who's like, all right, you can take the thing you came to take, but also disappear with the thing I'm studying because then I get a deadline extension.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Well, it's like an actual docent in a museum who is just like, usually just a person. Where it's like, I could probably steamroll you if I was an actual art thief. I'd probably get past this.
Yeah. And like a heist also has sort of a structure. You case the joint, you gather intel, you go in, you get out, and then you can add little bits to the before and the after. You can have a tense handoff and a double crossing, or before that you can have a meeting with a shadowy facilitator. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe your character is in there for their anti-colonial reasons, but the anti-colonial thing is a detour. They are getting access to the museum to help somebody else do some other thing. You can do a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
It's an important angle. I encourage people to look into the topic because it's infuriating.
Yeah.
And you don't often think about it, like being Brazilian, being from a country that to this day suffers from, echoes of colonial fuckery and echoes of the US-backed dictatorship and stuff. I went to the Louvre in Paris, and I was like, cool, mummies, awesome, and all this Assyrian shit. And then later, oh no. Like, the mummies that are here are the mummies the elites didn't snort. Mm-hmm. Or eat as medicine and stuff. And
yeah, that's snorting.
It didn't occur to me.
That's real. That's real history. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it can often be overlooked very easily how artifacts get from one place to where they're currently housed and the actual political history that's behind that. So, I mean, I think it's fantastic that there would be a game that would point people to think in that direction or invite people to think about the politics of museums and how you can kind of undermine them.
Yeah. Yeah, and even like there's a couple of science podcasts recently that highlighted that Brazil is like a hotbed of research in paleontology on dinosaurs, and then a lot of the actual fossils are in Germany for some reason. They're just like straight up, they're stolen in the sense they're quote unquote bought legally, but they're illegally sold. So it's like the person that you use, like, well, I bought it legally, I didn't do a bad, but I didn't know that the person selling it to me just, stole it from a scientist basically, or, took it out of the ground while scientists were trying to carefully whatever. But it was amazing to hear, like, just how strong paleontology is. And it was like, no, we have all the institutions, like there's no need to move these things. Mm-hmm. Like these are million-year-old samples that, like, we have a state now that supports this research. Let's just do it. And it's such a simple, dumb thing. Like, yeah, so don't steal it, take it somewhere else.
I have a thing to send you guys. I can't send stuff to the Twitch chat, but it just popped in my mind. I sent it in the private chat so you can share with everyone.
Sure.
It's about Nicolas Cage returning a stolen Mongolian dinosaur skull he bought at a gallery.
That is fantastic. I'll post this in our... Oh, okay, you got it.
That sounds like a game that you or we should be working out. Somebody should make that game.
One of my players in one of the Wythe Chris playtests was basically playing Nicolas Cage, but their quest was to steal a giant prehistoric penis bone of a walrus.
It's pretty good.
And then I get all these bleeding hearts to join me for their anti-colonial reasons. But he was the money.
It's pretty good. I mean, Nicolas Cage, the true national treasure.
Yeah. Pretty much one of the few remaining good things about the United States. But sorry, what was that, Leo?
You guys watch Pig?
Yeah.
Yes.
Pig.
Oh, I love it.
It's very good.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean Nicolas Cage, he's got some good stuff under his resume in the last, I want to say, 5 years or so. I mean, Pig was great. I know that Mandy is very controversial, but it's a wild ride.
Mandy's fantastic. Yeah. Mandy's his best work, I think, along with Pig.
It's a wild ride.
I cannot believe great. And Prepararo was going to charge him. This is such an interesting story. Imagine that trial if he had gone to trial to defend his skull. Oh man, now I want to write a legal RPG. It's a legal thriller, drama, courtroom, John Grisham vibe, but it's about famous people trying to steal artifacts and getting caught.
Ooh, yeah.
Something like that.
I like that.
Anyway, we'll workshop it.
There was
Leo...
another thing, hang on.
Yeah.
I had another Wythe Chris related thing. Let's see if I can fish it out of my brain, post to the Cage event.
Cage effect.
I was just gonna say we should have you back on. We want to play. I know we're gonna play Death Sentence as an official Friends of Stillfleet thing. We should also play Wythe Kunst, which I think would be fun. And I love a heist. We have a heist mini venture coming out for Stillfleet that is by Stephen Aubrey and has new heist rules about the sort of archetypal roles you play in a heist, separate from class, right? So like, what are you there to do?
Very cool.
That's cool.
Which we love. We love coming up with epiphenomenal modules, things you can just stick on a game. But
yeah, I'd be happy to run some Wythe Kunst, and I remembered what I was going to say. You mentioned Brazil being a hotbed of paleontology. Well, we have this problem here, which is that places where scientific findings are stored keep fucking going up in flames. I wish it was a joke. You guys are probably familiar with the one big famous museum fire in Rio a couple years ago. But that's not an isolated event, and there's this pattern of underfunding that left a lot of things with outdated, faulty wiring. And because those places keep some really dry stuff, it can go disastrously. It happened a couple times. I would hope that the big, internationally reported Rio event prevented some stuff. But like we had forests. We had research stations in forested regions going up in flames. We had other museums that burned down. And it's not just paleontology. Like, there are some old... I think we lost some recordings, like wax recordings of indigenous languages that are no longer spoken, that just melted. So, like... I like to beat on the drum of fund science more. Holy shit, here in Brazil.
Yeah.
Get things adequately housed and so on. When I was going to university, I thought I was going to be a science journalist. It was the thing I was really focused on. So I spent a lot of time talking to people like who are in the trenches doing research, teaching, working at museums and so on. And it was bad. It got worse with Bolsonaro. I hope it's recovering now. But like approving additional funds even for basic infrastructure maintenance stuff is tough.
Yeah, and I mean it's definitely about funding, but there's also in the longue durée, this is about like the ability of humans to capture moments in time in a entropic universe and on a planet where they've sort of set a bunch of processes spinning that militate against stability, so like it'll only get worse basically everywhere as governments are forced to put more money into climate adaptation and basic research about climate adaptation, for example, and pull like arts and humanities funding. So it's interesting to think about like what preservation means, especially as every year now we generate more data than all of human history combined up until that year due to the internet and AI. So it's like how much of that needs to get preserved and how much of it is like basically just random, or it's all up to some company. And if that company ever, let's say, I don't know, Amazon Web Services goes under, how many like things just disappear that we've like entrusted. Like I've entrusted everything to Google, so please, I hope Google doesn't disappear, because all of my stuff is like in one place.
There's a big thing about missing video game history because of that, because video games are digital media. So there's a push now to catalog and preserve stuff, but a lot has already been lost.
A lot's been lost. Well, isn't it like only 20% of games that have been published are even playable, something like that? I'm probably getting the number wrong. You might know better than me.
It's a low freaking number.
Yeah, it's shockingly low.
That's why we make books, baby.
But like straight up, make physical copies of things, keep them in places that are not the purview of Google and Amazon. This sort of pop archival initiatives is really, really important at this point. Especially for media that was born digital. Like music too. There's a lot of music out there who doesn't exist as physical stuff.
Well, on that note, so we have some. So first of all, decolonize art and science. Second of all, preserve your stuff physically, and maybe don't entrust it to just 2 giant or 3 giant companies. Throw Apple in there. And check out Leo Andrade's work on Itch. Right? I posted a link to Death Sentence. But is that the best place to find you?
You can send people to my website. My tabletop RPG portfolio is pretty up to date, except for the sentence that I have to dive in and add. And then I don't know if anybody is making an indie video game and needs a writer. Check out the portfolio. I have playable pieces.
Sweet.
Cool. Definitely hire Leo for various things, and I will be sad but happy also if you get a full-time job and can't work with us on Stillfleet and other Grit System games, and maybe, who knows, Danse Macabre. But until then, and we can always, hang out and play games. And thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else either of y'all want to cover that we haven't gotten to? Just want to be mindful of, we're at an hour for this ep, so...
I thought it was going to take 2 hours, but I'm pretty free. But I don't have anything that I really need to add. I'm happy to stop now. Thank you for inviting me. This is cool. It's always nice to show up and talk to people about the things I'm making. Nice to meet you, Chris.
Yeah, good to meet you too, Leo. Thanks so much for joining us today.
And that's it for me.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for us as well.
And hey to Luna Johns and ATL Zach in the chat.
What's up?
And I hope we could do this again, Leo. That was going to be my pitch. Let's play Wythe Chris, let's play Death Sentence, and it can be part of the official Why We Roll. Whatever we are, podcast, stream stuff. Streamcast,
multimedia.
We're innovating.
Multimedia artifact generator.
And we'll take your games that are video games, and then we will carve them in stone tablets so that future generations can put them back into computers.
Just chuck them into space for the aliens. Eventually, they will decipher Portuguese through my terrible robot who speaks in JoJo references.
Thanks for listening to Why We Roll. Our theme music is by the brilliant Sam Tyndall and Arcline. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find us on Twitch and what used to be Twitter at Why We Roll, and on Instagram at whyweroll.pod.
You can find out more about Danse Macabre at timespaceplace.itch.io/dance-macabre.
You can find out more about Stillfleet at stillfleet.com. Thanks for listening.
Every hero strikes out on their adventure for a different reason.
To prove myself worthy of my mother's praise.
To write my own story and discover who I really am.
To prove to my family that I am more than they believe me to be.
To revive the god that has chosen me.
But when the fragile balance of the world is in jeopardy, and sinister forces move in the darkness, heroes will be tested, pushed to their limits and beyond. And it will be left to them to determine if they are up to the task. There is a darkness rising. Will they be able to overcome the challenges and meet this evil head-on?
For my God.
For my story.
For my freedom.
For the world.
To restore the balance. Modified Role Season 2, The Chronicles of Erin, a D&D 5e actual play podcast. New season, new characters, new story. Find us on all the usual podcasting apps or at modifiedrole.com.